6 months after the incident at Thomas's Battersea, the comprehensive investigation had resulted in the dismantling of an international surveillance network that had been operating against European royal families for nearly 3 years. The coordinated arrests across 7 countries led to the prosecution of 18 individuals involved in systematic intelligence-gathering operations that had targeted not only the British royal family, but also the monarchies of Spain, Denmark, Norway, Sweden, Belgium, and the Netherlands. Prince George, now 9 years old, had returned to a completely normal school routine, though his experience had made him something of a legend among royal protection officers throughout Europe. His ability to notice suspicious behavior and communicate his concerns effectively had not only prevented a potential security breach, but had also led to the uncovering of the most sophisticated surveillance operation ever discovered targeting European monarchies. Detective Chief Inspector Amanda Foster completed her final report on Operation Crown Watch, the codename assigned to the investigation that had grown from Prince George's initial observation. The operation had involved over 200 law enforcement and intelligence personnel from multiple countries, had led to the seizure of millions of pounds worth of surveillance equipment, and had resulted in the identification of a funding network that extended to organizations in 12 different countries. The trial of David Reynolds had concluded with his conviction on charges of conspiracy to gather intelligence against protected individuals, possession of surveillance equipment with criminal intent, and fraud. His sentence of 12 years imprisonment reflected both the seriousness of his individual crimes and his cooperation with authorities in providing information about the broader surveillance network. Reynolds' testimony had been crucial in understanding how the network operated and in identifying other participants. Chief Superintendent Robert Harrison presented the findings of Operation Crown Watch to an international conference of Royal Protection Services held at Scotland Yard. Representatives from police and intelligence agencies across Europe attended the briefing, which detailed how a single alert 8-year-old prince had triggered the discovery of a surveillance network that had been operating undetected for years. The case became a model for international cooperation in protecting royal families and other high-profile individuals. The technological analysis of the surveillance network's equipment had revealed capabilities that concerned intelligence professionals throughout Europe. The devices were sophisticated enough to monitor secure communications, track movements with precision, and gather detailed information about security procedures. Most troubling was evidence that the network had been developing plans to use this intelligence for coordinated operations targeting multiple royal families simultaneously. Prince George had been briefed about the investigation's outcome in terms appropriate for his age and understanding. He learned that his decision to trust his instincts and alert his protection officers had helped prevent not only a potential threat to himself, but had also protected royal families throughout Europe. The young prince accepted this information with characteristic modesty, noting that he had simply done what his parents and grandparents had taught him about being observant and trusting the professionals responsible for his safety. The educational impact of the case extended far beyond law enforcement and security circles. Child development experts studied how an 8-year-old had demonstrated such remarkable situational awareness and decision-making under pressure. Prince George's ability to notice details that adults had missed, trust his instincts about potentially threatening behavior, and communicate effectively with his protection team became a case study in developing security awareness in young people. Enhanced security protocols developed as a result of Operation Crown Watch were implemented not only for royal families, but also for other protected individuals, including senior government officials, diplomats, and their children. The case demonstrated that surveillance networks might target the children of prominent individuals as a way to gather intelligence about security arrangements and family routines. The charity event at Thomas's Battersea had become an annual tradition, with Prince George continuing to participate each year. The event's success in supporting military families had grown significantly, partly due to the attention generated by the security incident and the prince's mature handling of the situation. The school community took pride in their role in supporting both charitable causes and national security. International cooperation agreements were formalized between European countries to enhance information sharing about potential threats to royal families and other protected individuals. These agreements established protocols for joint investigations, coordinated response measures, and shared training programs for protection officers. The Operation Crown Watch case served as the foundation for these enhanced security arrangements. Prince George's relationship with his protection team had evolved as a result of the incident. The young prince better understood the serious responsibilities of the men and women assigned to his security, and they had gained enormous respect for his alertness and composure. This mutual understanding and trust became a model for how protection relationships should develop with young members of royal families. The investigation had revealed that the surveillance network's ultimate objectives remained unclear, though evidence suggested planning for coordinated propaganda operations designed to embarrass or compromise European monarchies. The intelligence gathered appeared to be intended for creating situations that would damage public confidence in royal institutions rather than for planning physical attacks against individuals. Advanced training programs developed from Operation Crown Watch were implemented in protection services throughout Europe. These programs emphasized the importance of maintaining awareness during routine activities, recognizing sophisticated surveillance techniques, and coordinating responses to potential threats. Prince George's actions became a central case study in these training programs. The forensic analysis of financial records had traced the network's funding to organizations promoting Republican ideologies and anti-monarchy movements. While these groups had legitimate rights to advocate for their political views, their funding of covert surveillance operations crossed legal boundaries and raised questions about the methods some organizations were willing to employ to advance their objectives. Prince George's parents, the Prince and Princess of Wales, expressed pride in their son's handling of the situation and his contribution to protecting royal families throughout Europe. They noted that his actions demonstrated the values they had worked to instill in him: awareness of his responsibilities, trust in professional expertise, and commitment to protecting others. These qualities would serve him well throughout his life as a member of the royal family. The media coverage of Operation Crown Watch focused on the international cooperation that had dismantled the surveillance network while respecting Prince George's privacy and the security considerations involved in protecting young members of royal families. The case demonstrated how effective law enforcement cooperation could address sophisticated threats that crossed international boundaries. Detective Inspector Sarah Mitchell, whose initial response to Prince George's alert had been crucial to the investigation's success, was promoted to Detective Chief Inspector and assigned to lead a new international liaison unit focused on threats to royal and diplomatic security. Her expertise in managing complex, sensitive investigations made her ideally suited for coordinating future international security operations. The long-term impact of Operation Crown Watch extended to academic research on security awareness and threat detection. Universities studying international security, child psychology, and law enforcement cooperation examined various aspects of the case. Prince George's role became particularly significant for research on developing situational awareness and decision-making skills in young people. Technology companies worked with law enforcement agencies to develop better methods for detecting and counteracting sophisticated surveillance equipment. The devices seized during Operation Crown Watch provided valuable insights into current capabilities and emerging threats, leading to improved countermeasures and detection technologies for protecting high-profile individuals and their families. 5 years later, Prince George would continue his education with the same alertness and maturity that had characterized his handling of the incident at Thomas's Battersea. His experience had taught him valuable lessons about trust, responsibility, and the importance of professional security expertise. These lessons would remain with him throughout his life, helping him navigate the unique challenges and responsibilities of his position as a future king. The annual charity event at Thomas's Battersea continued to honor military families while serving as a reminder of how alertness, courage, and professional expertise had combined to protect not only one young prince, but royal families throughout Europe. The event's success demonstrated that even serious security incidents could not diminish the power of community spirit and commitment to worthy causes. Chief Superintendent Harrison concluded his final report on Operation Crown Watch by noting that the investigation had demonstrated the critical importance of training all members of royal families, regardless of age, to be observant and to trust their instincts about potential threats. Prince George's actions had proven that effective security required partnership between protection officers and those they protected, and that even the youngest members of royal families could make crucial contributions to their own safety and the safety of others, speaks out 3 weeks after the incident at Thomas's Battersea. The investigation into David Reynolds had expanded into a complex international operation involving intelligence services from multiple countries. What had begun as a single suspicious individual at a school charity event had revealed connections to a sophisticated network of individuals conducting surveillance operations against various European royal families and their security arrangements. Detective Chief Inspector Amanda Foster, who had taken over coordination of the expanded investigation from Detective Inspector Mitchell, reviewed intelligence reports from agencies in France, Spain, Denmark, and the Netherlands. Each country had reported similar incidents involving individuals with sophisticated surveillance equipment attempting to gather information about royal family protection protocols during public events and private activities. The pattern was both methodical and concerning. In each case, the individuals involved had used similar equipment, employed comparable reconnaissance techniques, and demonstrated professional-level training in surveillance and counter-surveillance methods. The coordination suggested either a well-funded organization or possible state sponsorship of the surveillance activities targeting European monarchies. Prince George had returned to his normal routine at school, though his protection arrangements now included enhanced screening of all event attendees and additional background verification procedures for anyone requesting access to royal family events. The young prince adapted to these changes with characteristic resilience, understanding that they were necessary for his safety and the safety of others around him. The forensic analysis of Reynolds' electronic devices had revealed encrypted communication records with individuals in at least 6 different countries. Intelligence analysts worked to decrypt these communications, which appeared to contain detailed reports about royal family activities, security procedures, and potential vulnerabilities in protection arrangements. The level of detail and professional analysis in these reports suggested coordination by individuals with extensive experience in intelligence operations. MI5 assigned a dedicated team to investigate potential domestic connections to the surveillance network. This team focused on identifying any individuals within the United Kingdom who might be providing inside information about royal family activities or security procedures. The investigation included reviewing the backgrounds and communications of individuals with access to sensitive information about royal protection arrangements. Chief Superintendent Harrison met regularly with senior officials from the Cabinet Office and the Foreign and Commonwealth Office to brief them on the investigation's progress and coordinate response measures. The discovery of an international surveillance network targeting royal families had implications for diplomatic relations and national security that extended far beyond the initial incident at Prince George's School. The investigation revealed that Reynolds had received significant financial support for his surveillance activities. Banking records showed regular transfers from offshore accounts linked to organizations with anti-monarchy objectives. The funding appeared sufficient to support full-time surveillance activities and the acquisition of sophisticated equipment over an extended period. Prince George's protection team implemented new protocols based on lessons learned from the incident and ongoing investigation. These included enhanced communication security measures, modified procedures for advanced site surveys, and improved coordination with local law enforcement agencies for events involving young members of the royal family. The changes were designed to be invisible to the public while significantly enhancing security effectiveness. International cooperation in the investigation led to the identification of at least 12 individuals across Europe who had been conducting similar surveillance operations. Coordinated arrests were planned to ensure that the network could be dismantled without alerting other potential operatives who might attempt to destroy evidence or flee to avoid prosecution. The psychological evaluation of Reynolds revealed a complex individual motivated by a combination of ideological opposition to monarchy and financial incentives. His recruitment appeared to have occurred gradually over several years, beginning with participation in anti-monarchy protests and evolving into active surveillance and intelligence-gathering activities. This pattern suggested a sophisticated recruitment and development process designed to identify and cultivate individuals suitable for long-term operations. Educational institutions across the United Kingdom that regularly hosted royal family members received updated security guidance based on the investigation findings. This guidance included enhanced procedures for vetting event attendees, improved coordination with protection services, and specific protocols for identifying and reporting suspicious behavior during royal visits. Prince George demonstrated remarkable maturity in discussing the incident with his parents and security team. His questions about the investigation showed genuine interest in understanding how his observations had contributed to preventing a more serious security breach. The young prince's composure and curiosity impressed adults who had expected him to be more troubled by the experience. The investigation team worked with technology experts to understand how the surveillance network had obtained access to sophisticated monitoring equipment. Some devices found in Reynolds' possession were modified versions of commercial surveillance tools, enhanced with capabilities typically reserved for law enforcement and intelligence agencies. This suggested either theft of restricted equipment or access to individuals capable of professional-level modifications. Diplomatic discussions began with countries where network operatives had been identified to coordinate legal proceedings and information sharing. The international nature of the surveillance operation required careful coordination to ensure that prosecutions in different jurisdictions would be mutually supportive and that intelligence gathered in one country could be effectively shared with allies. Chief Superintendent Harrison testified before a closed session of the Parliamentary Intelligence and Security Committee about the investigation and its implications for royal family security. His briefing covered both the specific incident involving Prince George and the broader surveillance network that had been discovered as a result of the young prince's alertness and the subsequent investigation. The charity event at Thomas's Battersea had ultimately contributed over £40,000 to military families, significantly exceeding original goals. The success demonstrated that the security incident had not deterred the school community's commitment to supporting worthy causes. Prince George's speech continued to be remembered as particularly moving and authentic, with several attendees noting his genuine emotion when discussing the sacrifices made by military families. Advanced training programs were developed for protection officers assigned to young members of the royal family. These programs incorporated lessons learned from the investigation, including enhanced techniques for identifying surveillance activities, improved methods for coordinating responses to potential threats, and specialized procedures for maintaining security while allowing normal childhood activities to continue. Reynolds' trial preparation revealed the extent of his surveillance activities against Prince George and other members of the royal family. Evidence included detailed schedules of the prince's school activities, photographs of his daily routines, and comprehensive notes about security procedures and protection officer rotations. The level of detail demonstrated persistent and professional surveillance over an extended period. International intelligence sharing arrangements were strengthened to improve early detection of similar surveillance networks in the future. These arrangements included protocols for sharing information about suspicious individuals, coordination of investigations involving multiple countries, and joint assessment procedures for evaluating threats against royal families and other protected individuals. Prince George's teachers at Thomas's Battersea received specialized briefings about recognizing and reporting potential security concerns during royal visits and normal school activities. This training helped them understand their role in supporting security arrangements while maintaining the normal educational environment that was so important for the prince's development and well-being. The investigation's impact extended to security arrangements for other members of the royal family, particularly young princes and princesses who might be vulnerable to similar surveillance activities. Enhanced protocols were implemented for Prince George's siblings and cousins, ensuring that lessons learned from this incident would benefit the security of the entire next generation of the royal family. Detective Inspector Mitchell received recognition for her professional handling of the initial incident and her coordination of the complex investigation that followed. Her ability to respond effectively to Prince George's subtle alert had been crucial in preventing a potential security breach and uncovering a much larger surveillance operation targeting European royal families. The case became a subject of study in law enforcement and security training programs, demonstrating the importance of training protected individuals to be observant and to trust their instincts about suspicious behavior. Prince George's alertness and decision to communicate his concerns had exemplified the kind of partnership between protection officers and those they protect that was essential for effective security operations. As the investigation continued, additional evidence emerged suggesting that the surveillance network had been gathering intelligence for potential future operations rather than planning immediate attacks. This intelligence-gathering focus made the network particularly dangerous, as it suggested long-term planning and the possibility of coordinated activities targeting multiple royal families simultaneously across Europe. The secure conference room in the administrative wing of Thomas's Battersea had been quickly converted into a temporary command center for the Metropolitan Police's investigation. Detective Inspector Sarah Mitchell reviewed the preliminary information that had been gathered about the detained individual, while Prince George sat calmly in an adjacent room under the protection of two officers, completing his homework as if nothing unusual had occurred. The man identified himself as David Reynolds, age 34, claiming to be a freelance journalist working on a story about security protocols at events involving royal family members. However, initial background checks revealed several concerning inconsistencies in his story. The press credentials he carried appeared to be sophisticated forgeries, and the publication he claimed to represent had no record of employing anyone by that name. More troubling was the discovery of specialized surveillance equipment in Reynolds' possession. Hidden within what appeared to be a standard camera bag were devices designed for long-distance audio recording, frequency scanning equipment that could monitor security communications, and a small device capable of jamming radio transmissions. This was not the equipment of a legitimate journalist covering a school charity event. Chief Superintendent Robert Harrison arrived at the school within 20 minutes of receiving Detective Inspector Mitchell's initial report. Harrison commanded the Metropolitan Police's Royalty and Specialist Protection Unit and had personally overseen security operations involving the royal family for over 15 years. His presence indicated that the incident was being treated with the highest level of seriousness and attention. The investigation team quickly established a timeline of Reynolds' activities leading up to the charity event. Security footage from the school's surveillance system showed that he had arrived nearly an hour before the scheduled start time and had spent considerable time studying the layout of the building, the positioning of emergency exits, and the general flow of people throughout the facility. This behavior was consistent with advanced reconnaissance rather than the casual arrival of a family member attending a school event. Prince George, meanwhile, demonstrated remarkable resilience and maturity in dealing with the disruption to his day. When Detective Inspector Mitchell explained that they needed to investigate the individual he had identified, the young prince simply nodded and asked if there was anything else he could do to help. His calm acceptance of the situation and willingness to cooperate impressed the experienced security professionals who had worked with many members of the royal family over the years. The forensic examination of Reynolds' equipment revealed even more concerning information. The frequency scanner in his possession had been programmed with the specific radio channels used by the Metropolitan Police's protection units, suggesting either inside knowledge of security protocols or extensive surveillance of royal family security operations. The audio recording equipment was sophisticated enough to capture conversations from significant distances, even in crowded environments. Chief Superintendent Harrison authorized a comprehensive background investigation into Reynolds' activities, associates, and possible motivations for attempting to infiltrate a royal security operation. This investigation would involve multiple law enforcement agencies and intelligence services, as any attempt to compromise royal family security was considered a matter of national security with potentially international implications. The headmaster, Mr. O'Malley, worked closely with the police investigation while ensuring that the charity event could continue successfully for the other students and families in attendance. The school's crisis management protocols had prepared the staff for various emergency scenarios, though none had anticipated a security incident involving sophisticated surveillance equipment and potential threats to a member of the royal family. As the investigation continued, additional information about Reynolds began to emerge. Financial records showed recent large cash deposits into his bank accounts from untraceable sources. Travel records indicated that he had made several trips to countries known for hosting individuals with anti-monarchy sentiments. Most concerning was evidence of contact with organizations that had previously been investigated for planning protests and disruptions at royal family events. Detective Inspector Mitchell coordinated with MI5, the United Kingdom's domestic intelligence service, to determine whether Reynolds' activities were part of a larger surveillance or threat operation targeting the royal family. The sophisticated nature of his equipment and the level of preparation evident in his reconnaissance activities suggested professional training and possibly state-level or organized group support. Prince George's parents, the Prince and Princess of Wales, were immediately notified of the situation and provided with a comprehensive briefing about the threat that had been identified and neutralized. While they expressed concern about their son's safety, they also praised his alertness and decision to report his observations to the protection officers. The young prince's actions had prevented a potentially serious security breach. The investigation team discovered that Reynolds had been conducting surveillance of Prince George's activities for at least several weeks prior to the charity event. Photographs found in his possession showed the prince arriving at and departing from school on various dates, along with detailed notes about security procedures, timing of protection officer rotations, and the general patterns of the young royal's daily routine. This revelation transformed the investigation from an isolated incident to a comprehensive security review of all protocols involving Prince George's protection. Chief Superintendent Harrison ordered immediate changes to the prince's security arrangements, including modified transportation routes, adjusted timing for public appearances, and enhanced screening procedures for any events he would attend. The forensic analysis of Reynolds' recording equipment revealed that he had been attempting to capture specific details about radio communications between protection officers. Several partially recorded conversations were found on his devices, containing fragments of security protocols and coordination procedures that could potentially be used to compromise future protection operations. International law enforcement agencies were contacted to investigate Reynolds' recent travel and possible connections to anti-monarchy groups operating in other countries. Preliminary intelligence suggested that he may have received training in surveillance techniques and electronic equipment operation from individuals with experience in espionage or professional intelligence gathering. Prince George returned to his normal schedule the following day, though with enhanced security measures that were invisible to casual observers. The young prince understood that the incident had resulted in changes to his protection arrangements, but he accepted these modifications with the same mature composure he had demonstrated throughout the entire situation. The charity event ultimately raised over £30,000 for military families, exceeding all expectations and demonstrating that the security incident had not diminished the school community's commitment to supporting worthy causes. Prince George's speech about honoring those who serve had been particularly well received, and several attendees commented on his poise and genuine emotion when discussing military families. Detective Inspector Mitchell prepared a comprehensive report detailing the incident, the investigation findings, and recommendations for enhanced security protocols at future events involving young members of the royal family. Her report would be studied by security professionals throughout the law enforcement and intelligence communities as a case study in threat identification and response. The investigation into Reynolds' background continued to reveal concerning information about his activities and possible motivations. Computer analysis of his electronic devices showed extensive research into royal family schedules, security procedures, and the specific daily routines of various family members. This level of detailed surveillance suggested either professional training or access to inside information about royal protection operations. Chief Superintendent Harrison ordered a comprehensive review of all individuals with access to information about royal family security arrangements. While there was no immediate evidence of inside assistance to Reynolds, the sophistication of his surveillance operation raised questions about how he had obtained such detailed knowledge of protection protocols and procedures. The incident demonstrated the critical importance of training young members of the royal family to be observant and to trust their instincts about people and situations. Prince George's ability to notice Reynolds' unusual behavior and communicate his concerns to the protection officers had been instrumental in preventing what could have developed into a serious security breach. Educational specialists worked with the royal family to develop age-appropriate security awareness training for Prince George and his siblings. This training would help them understand how to identify potential threats and communicate effectively with their protection officers while maintaining their ability to participate normally in school and social activities. The investigation team worked closely with technology experts to understand the full capabilities of the surveillance equipment Reynolds had been carrying. Some of the devices were more sophisticated than equipment typically available to civilians, suggesting possible access to professional or military-grade surveillance technology through unauthorized channels. Reynolds remained in custody while the investigation continued, facing charges related to fraud, possession of surveillance equipment with intent to commit crimes, and attempting to breach security arrangements for protected individuals. The case would likely involve national security considerations given the target of his surveillance activities and the sophisticated nature of his preparation and equipment. Detective Inspector Sarah Mitchell's earpiece crackled with urgent but controlled communications as she watched the suspicious individual continue his movement toward the front of the assembly hall. Her team of 8 protection officers, positioned strategically throughout the venue, was now operating under Code Amber protocols, the security classification used when a potential threat had been identified but not yet confirmed as hostile. The man appeared to be in his mid-30s, approximately 6 feet tall, with dark hair and wearing a gray wool sweater over dark jeans. What made him stand out wasn't his appearance, which was entirely unremarkable, but rather his behavior patterns. Unlike every other attendee at the charity event, he seemed completely uninterested in the proceedings while showing intense focus on the security arrangements and the prince's position. Officer James Crawford, positioned near the hall's main entrance, began to move casually toward the center aisle while maintaining visual contact with his target. His movements appeared natural and unhurried to the general audience, but his fellow protection officers recognized the deliberate positioning that would allow him to intercept the individual if necessary. Crawford had 15 years of experience in royal protection and had developed an instinctive ability to assess and respond to potential threats without causing panic among civilians. Meanwhile, Prince George remained near the podium, his composure remarkable for someone his age who found himself at the center of a developing security situation. The young prince had been trained to recognize when his protection officers were implementing emergency procedures, and he knew that his role was to remain calm, stay in position, and follow any instructions given to him by the security team. The headmaster, Mr. O'Malley, noticed the subtle but unmistakable signs that something was developing among the security personnel. His experience hosting royal visits had taught him to recognize when protection officers shifted from routine monitoring to active threat assessment. Without being obvious about it, he began to position himself closer to Prince George, ready to assist with crowd management if the situation required evacuation or lockdown procedures. Detective Inspector Mitchell activated her secure communication channel to Scotland Yard's Central Command, providing a concise situation report that would ensure additional resources could be deployed if needed. Her message was coded but clear. Potential security incident involving an 8-year-old royal family member at a public school event. Unknown individual exhibiting suspicious behavior. Situation under assessment. Backup requested to be on standby. The response from Central Command was immediate and comprehensive. Within minutes, additional Metropolitan Police units were being dispatched to the school's vicinity, though they would maintain a discreet distance unless specifically requested to intervene. The royal family's security protocols had been developed over decades of experience and refined through countless incidents, both minor and serious. Every potential threat was treated with the same level of professional attention and preparation. As the suspicious individual continued moving through the crowd, Officer Lisa Thompson, who had been positioned near the stage area, began to angle herself to create a protective barrier between the man and Prince George. Her movement was subtle but effective, and it allowed her to get a closer look at the individual's behavior and any items he might be carrying. What Thompson observed added to her team's concerns. The man appeared to be carrying a small recording device, which wasn't necessarily threatening in itself, since many parents recorded their children's school events. However, his focus seemed to be on capturing security protocols and protection officer positions rather than documenting the charity presentations or his child's participation in the event. Prince George, from his position near the podium, could see the coordinated movement of his protection team and understood that the situation was being taken seriously. Despite being only 8 years old, he had already experienced enough public events to recognize when security protocols were being elevated. His parents had always taught him that the men and women responsible for his safety were highly trained professionals who deserved his complete trust and cooperation. The young prince's grandmother, Queen Elizabeth II, had often spoken to him about the importance of remaining calm under pressure and trusting in the expertise of those whose job it was to protect the royal family. These conversations, which had seemed somewhat abstract to a child, now took on immediate and practical significance as he found himself in a real situation requiring exactly the kind of composure and trust his grandmother had described. The suspicious individual suddenly stopped his movement toward the front of the hall and began to look around the room with what appeared to be increased alertness. It was as if he had become aware that his behavior was being monitored and assessed by the security team. This change in his demeanor immediately elevated the threat level in the minds of the protection officers, as it suggested possible training or experience in evading security surveillance. Detective Inspector Mitchell made the decision to initiate direct contact with the individual. Rather than continuing to observe from a distance, she determined that a controlled approach would allow her team to assess his intentions and identity while maintaining security for Prince George and the other attendees. This decision required careful coordination to ensure that the approach didn't escalate the situation unnecessarily. Officer Crawford received instructions through his earpiece to begin a casual approach to the individual, ostensibly as a general security check rather than a targeted investigation. The goal was to engage the man in conversation, verify his identity and reason for attending the event, and assess whether he posed any actual threat to the proceedings or the attendees. As Crawford began to move toward the individual, the atmosphere in the assembly hall continued to evolve. Some parents had begun to notice the increased activity among the security personnel, though most remained focused on the charity presentations and their children's participation in the event. The teachers, however, had started to implement subtle crowd management procedures that would facilitate rapid evacuation if such action became necessary. Prince George watched as Officer Crawford approached the suspicious individual and began what appeared to be a friendly conversation. The young prince understood that this interaction would likely determine whether the situation remained a minor security concern or developed into something more serious. His role was to remain alert, but avoid any action that might complicate his protection team's efforts. The conversation between Officer Crawford and the individual began cordially, with Crawford identifying himself as part of the school's security coordination and requesting basic information about the man's connection to the event. The individual provided what appeared to be appropriate responses, explaining that he was the uncle of one of the students participating in the charity presentation and had come to show his support for the military family's initiative. However, when Crawford asked for specific details about which student the man was there to support, the responses became vague and inconsistent. The individual claimed his nephew was in year 4 and participating in a presentation about military service, but he couldn't provide the child's name or specify which part of the program his nephew would be involved in. These inconsistencies immediately raised additional red flags for the experienced protection officer. Detective Inspector Mitchell, monitoring the conversation through Crawford's concealed microphone, realized that they were likely dealing with someone who had gained access to the event under false pretenses. This revelation transformed the situation from a potential security concern to an active threat assessment requiring immediate and decisive action. The decision was made to detain the individual for further questioning, while simultaneously implementing enhanced protection protocols for Prince George. This would involve discreetly removing the young prince from the assembly hall while allowing the charity event to continue for the other attendees. The goal was to ensure the prince's safety without creating panic or disrupting the important fundraising activities for military families. Officer Thompson received instructions to begin moving Prince George toward a predetermined secure location within the school building. This movement would appear routine to most observers, as if the prince was simply taking a brief break or moving to a different part of the program. However, it would actually remove him from potential danger while allowing the security team to focus on properly investigating and addressing the suspicious individual. As Prince George was guided away from the podium area, he maintained his composure while understanding that the situation had reached a point where his protection team needed to prioritize his safety above all other considerations. The young prince's ability to remain calm and cooperative during what was obviously a tense situation impressed even the experienced officers responsible for his security. The individual being questioned by Officer Crawford suddenly became agitated when he realized that his responses were being scrutinized and that additional security personnel were taking positions around him. His demeanor shifted from cooperative to defensive, and he began to make statements about his rights and demanding to know why he was being questioned at a school charity event. This change in behavior confirmed Detective Inspector Mitchell's assessment that they were dealing with someone who posed a potential threat to the event and its attendees. The decision was made to formally detain the individual and remove him from the premises while conducting a thorough investigation into his identity, background, and reasons for attempting to gain unauthorized access to an event involving a member of the royal family. The removal of the suspicious individual was conducted with professional efficiency and minimal disruption to the ongoing charity presentations. Most attendees remained unaware that a security incident had been developing around them, which was exactly the outcome that the protection team had been working to achieve. The event continued successfully, raising significant funds for military families while maintaining the safety and security of all participants. Prince George, now in a secure location within the school building, was briefed by Detective Inspector Mitchell about what had transpired and why the security measures had been necessary. Despite his young age, he understood that his initial observation and decision to alert his protection team had been crucial in identifying and addressing a potential threat before it could develop into something more dangerous. The morning sun cast long shadows across the pristine grounds of Thomas's Battersea as 8-year-old Prince George adjusted his navy blazer and straightened his small shoulders. Today was different from his usual school routine. Today, he would be representing the royal family at the school's annual charity event, a responsibility that felt enormous to someone who still needed help tying his shoes properly. Detective Inspector Sarah Mitchell of the Metropolitan Police's Royalty and Specialist Protection Unit watched from her position near the main entrance as the young prince walked confidently toward the assembly hall. Her trained eyes swept the crowd of parents, teachers, and students who had gathered for the event. Everything appeared normal, routine even. She had no idea that within the next hour, she would be coordinating the most unprecedented security response in the history of royal protection. Prince George had been attending Thomas's Battersea for 2 years now, and the school community had grown accustomed to the discreet presence of his protection officers. Today's event was particularly special because it focused on supporting military families, a cause close to the royal family's heart. The prince had been preparing for weeks, practicing his speech about why supporting those who serve was so important. As George entered the assembly hall, he noticed immediately that something felt different. The usual warmth and enthusiasm that characterized school events seemed muted. Teachers exchanged worried glances, and several parents appeared unusually tense. Even Mrs. Henderson, his favorite teacher who always greeted him with a bright smile, seemed distracted and anxious. The prince took his designated seat in the front row, flanked by 2 protection officers who maintained their professional demeanor while scanning the room continuously. Behind him, approximately 200 people filled the hall, including students from various year groups, teaching staff, parents, and several local dignitaries who had come to support the military charity initiative. Detective Inspector Mitchell positioned herself strategically at the back of the hall, her earpiece crackling softly with routine status updates from her team. The security protocols for this event had been meticulously planned weeks in advance. Every entrance and exit was monitored, every attendee had been vetted, and emergency evacuation procedures had been rehearsed multiple times. Yet something in the atmosphere made her instinctively alert. The headmaster, Mr. Simon O'Malley, approached the podium with measured steps. His usual confident demeanor seemed forced, and those who knew him well could detect the slight tremor in his hands as he adjusted the microphone. The charity event was meant to celebrate the school's commitment to supporting military families, but recent events had cast an unexpected shadow over the proceedings. 3 days earlier, the school had received what initially appeared to be a routine inquiry from a journalist requesting information about the prince's upcoming appearance. However, upon closer examination by the school's security coordinator and the Royal Protection Squad, certain elements of the inquiry had raised red flags. The journalist's credentials, while appearing legitimate on the surface, contained subtle inconsistencies that suggested something more sinister might be at play. As Mr. O'Malley began his opening remarks, Prince George listened politely, but his young mind was processing the unusual tension he could sense around him. Despite being only 8 years old, he had inherited his family's intuitive understanding of people and situations. Growing up in the royal household meant developing an early awareness of security considerations and the constant presence of potential threats. The program proceeded according to schedule, with various speakers addressing the importance of supporting military families and the ways in which the school community could contribute to this worthy cause. Several students from older year groups presented projects they had completed about different aspects of military service, and the audience responded with appropriate enthusiasm and applause. When the time came for Prince George to deliver his prepared remarks, he rose from his seat with the poise that had been instilled in him through countless hours of protocol training. However, as he approached the podium, he noticed something that made him pause. In the third row, slightly to his left, sat a man who didn't quite fit with the rest of the audience. The man appeared to be in his mid-30s, dressed appropriately in casual business attire, but there was something about his posture and the intensity of his gaze that set him apart. While everyone else in the audience was focused on the proceedings with the relaxed attention typical of school events, this individual seemed to be studying Prince George with an unsettling concentration. More concerning was what the prince observed in the man's hands. He appeared to be taking notes, but unlike the parents and teachers who might jot down inspirational quotes or memorable moments from the presentations, this person seemed to be documenting specific details about the security arrangements, the positioning of protection officers, and the general layout of the venue. Prince George had been taught from an early age to be observant and to trust his instincts about people and situations. His parents, the Prince and Princess of Wales, had explained to him in age-appropriate terms that his position sometimes attracted individuals with questionable intentions, and that he should always feel comfortable reporting anything that seemed unusual or concerning. As he stood at the podium, looking out at the audience of familiar and unfamiliar faces, the young prince made a decision that would demonstrate wisdom beyond his years. Instead of dismissing his concerns or assuming that the adults around him had already noticed what he had observed, he chose to trust his instincts and take action. During a brief pause in his prepared speech about the importance of supporting military families, Prince George did something unprecedented in royal protocol. He looked directly toward Detective Inspector Mitchell, made brief eye contact, and then glanced meaningfully toward the man in the third row who had been causing him concern. The trained protection officer immediately understood the prince's subtle communication. Her years of experience in security work had taught her to pay attention to even the smallest signals from those under her protection, and Prince George's gesture was clear and unmistakable. Without breaking her professional composure or causing any obvious disruption to the event, she began to focus her attention on the individual the prince had indicated. What Detective Inspector Mitchell observed confirmed the young prince's instincts. The man was indeed behaving differently from the other attendees. His note-taking appeared systematic and focused on security-related details rather than the content of the presentations. More troubling was his positioning, which provided him with clear sightlines to all the major access points and security positions throughout the hall. Using her earpiece, Mitchell began to quietly coordinate with her team members positioned around the venue. Her communications were coded and professional, designed to alert her colleagues to a potential security concern without causing panic or drawing attention to their activities. The protection officers had trained extensively for situations exactly like this, where a potential threat needed to be assessed and addressed without disrupting the event or alarming the attendees. As Prince George continued with his speech, speaking eloquently about the sacrifices made by military families and the importance of community support, the security operation around him shifted into high alert mode. Additional officers were discreetly repositioned to provide better coverage, emergency protocols were reviewed, and communication channels with external support units were activated. The prince, meanwhile, demonstrated remarkable composure for someone his age. Despite being aware that something concerning was developing around him, he completed his presentation with confidence and authenticity. His words about honoring those who serve their country resonated powerfully with the audience, and his genuine emotion when speaking about military families earned him enthusiastic applause. However, as the applause died down and Prince George prepared to return to his seat, the situation took an unexpected turn. The man who had been the focus of security attention suddenly stood up from his position in the third row. Instead of remaining in place like the other attendees, he began to move toward the aisle, apparently intending to approach the front of the hall where the prince was located. This movement immediately triggered heightened security protocols. Detective Inspector Mitchell and her team had been monitoring the individual, but his decision to leave his seat and move toward the prince represented a potential escalation that required immediate response. The protection officers positioned around the venue began to converge on the situation while maintaining their professional demeanor and trying to avoid causing alarm among the other attendees. Prince George, still standing near the podium, noticed the commotion beginning to develop around the man he had identified. His royal training had taught him that in situations involving potential security concerns, the best approach was to remain calm, follow the guidance of his protection officers, and avoid taking any independent action that might complicate the situation. The young prince's decision to alert his security team about his observations would prove to be crucial in the events that followed. His ability to notice details that seemed out of place, trust his instincts about people and situations, and communicate his concerns effectively to the appropriate authorities demonstrated a level of maturity and situational awareness that impressed even the experienced protection officers responsible for his safety. As the man continued to move through the crowd toward the front of the hall, Detective Inspector Mitchell realized that what had begun as a routine security assignment was rapidly developing into something far more complex and potentially dangerous. The next few minutes would test every aspect of her team's training, preparation, and ability to respond to an emerging threat while maintaining the safety and security of not only Prince George but also the 200 other people in attendance at the charity event. The atmosphere in the assembly hall, which had been celebratory and warm just moments earlier, was beginning to shift as more people became aware that something unusual was happening. Teachers started to notice the increased movement among the security personnel, parents began to sense tension they couldn't quite identify, and students started to whisper among themselves about what they were observing. Prince George remained at the front of the hall, his young face composed but his eyes alert to everything happening around him. He understood that his simple gesture toward Detective Inspector Mitchell had set in motion a series of events that were now beyond his control. All he could do was trust in the expertise and dedication of the professionals whose job it was to keep him and everyone else in the room safe from whatever threat might be developing.